My sister's text arrived while I was standing above the resort's private lagoon, watching her champagne cart roll toward a birthday dinner I had paid for. This party is at an exclusive resort. You can't afford it, Vanessa wrote. For a second. I just stared. Then the general manager stepped beside me and lowered his voice. Ms. Harrison, your family still doesn't know you own the place. I looked down through the glass at my father's table, at my mother laughing, at Vanessa saving the best seat for herself. I smiled. Not yet, because tonight. They weren't just celebrating Dad, they were auditioning for my mercy. In the Harrison family, love always came with a dress code. You had to look successful. You had to sound grateful. You had to sit straight at the dinner table and laugh at the right jokes, especially when my father told his old hotel stories like they were war medals. Walter Harrison was not a cruel man in the way strangers are cruel. He didn't slam doors. He didn't raise his voice much. He just had a way of looking at you like disappointment had a temperature, and he could lower the whole room with it. My mother, Diane, was softer on the outside, cashmere sweaters, vanilla perfume, a neat little kitchen that always smelled like coffee and lemon soap. But she could wound you while buttering toast. Helen, sweetheart, she'd say, are you still doing that travel thing? Never business, never work, never anything real. Vanessa loved that. My older sister had been born knowing how to stand in good lighting, perfect hair, perfect nails, perfect smile when people were watching. At Thanksgiving, she sat beside Dad, close enough to refill his glass before he asked. I sat near the end of the table, beside the folding chairs and the grocery store pie no one wanted to admit came from Walmart. Vanessa would talk about guest relations, luxury standards, important clients, industry contacts. Dad would nod like she was building an empire. Then someone would turn to me. So, Helen, where are you staying these days? Not, how are you not? Are you happy where are you staying like I was a suitcase with no owner? I used to answer honestly. Bali, Lisbon, Santa Fe, a small inn outside Napa, a coastal town in Maine. I didn't tell them I was studying service models, occupancy patterns, staff culture, what made guests return and what made them quietly disappear. I didn't tell them because they had already decided what my silence meant. Lost, broke, embarrassing. 5 years earlier. I walked away from the executive training path Dad wanted for me. He called it throwing away stability. Vanessa called it a phase. Mom cried quietly into a dish towel and said, I just hope you don't regret becoming ordinary. That sentence stayed with me, not because it was loud, because it was gentle, a blade wrapped in silk. So I stopped explaining. I built my life in places they mocked from a distance. I learned to let people underestimate me. I learned that when someone needs you to be small, your truth will sound like arrogance to them. That was why Vanessa's text hurt more than it should have. Not because she thought I couldn't afford the resort, because for my father's birthday, my own family had finally put in writing what they had been saying without words for years. Helen does not belong at this table. I looked at the old family photo on my desk. Vanessa stood in the center, Dad's hand on her shoulder. I was at the edge, half cut off by the frame, for the first time. I didn't move the photo back into place. The next afternoon, the resort prepared for my family like royalty was arriving. White orchids floated in shallow stone bowls. Cold towels sat rolled on silver trays, scented with mint and lime. The welcome staff lined the dock in cream uniforms while the waterplane cut across the lagoon, its engine growling over the soft slap of waves against the wooden pier. I watched from the shaded corridor above reception, my sunglasses low on my face, my name badge absent. To the guests below, I looked like another wealthy woman staying in an overwater villa. To the staff, I was the person who signed their paychecks. Vanessa stepped off first. Of course she did. Oversized sunglasses, white linen jumpsuit, gold bracelets stacked high enough to announce her before she spoke. She looked around, not with wonder, but with inspection, like beauty only existed so she could judge it. This dock is smaller than I expected, she said. My mother followed, one hand pressed to her hat. Dad came last, slower, taking in the turquoise water and the glassy villas stretching into the ocean. For one quiet second, His face softened. He looked impressed. Then Vanessa touched his arm and pointed toward the staff. "Remember, Dad, I told them we're in the industry. They should take care of us." I felt something cold move through my chest. In the industry. That phrase had carried Vanessa through half her life. It meant she expected upgrades she had not earned, discounts she had not been promised, and respect she did not know how to return. At the front desk, she leaned forward before the welcome drink was even placed in her hand. "We were supposed to have a more private villa," she said, "and there should be a professional courtesy rate attached to our booking." The receptionist smiled with the calm patience I paid people very well to protect. "Your reservation has been personally approved by ownership. Ma'am, the villa assigned is one of our finest." Vanessa's smile sharpened. "That's not what I asked." My mother glanced away. Dad adjusted his watch. Neither of them corrected her. I had seen Vanessa rude before, to servers, to valet attendants, to young employees who needed their jobs too badly to push back. But seeing her do it inside my resort, to people I knew by name, made the old family wound turn into something harder. The general manager, Caleb, stepped beside me quietly. His voice stayed low. "Ms. Harrison, your family still doesn't know you own the place." Below us, Vanessa lifted her phone and laughed at something she was showing Mom. I didn't have to see the screen to know. A second later, Mom said, "Poor Helen, she would have loved the pictures." Vanessa snorted. "Helen would have turned the towels into content. Honestly, she would have ruined the whole vibe." Dad heard it. He looked at the water and said nothing. That was the moment the insult stopped being a text message. It became a family decision. Caleb waited beside me, careful, silent. The air smelled like salt, sunscreen, and fresh flowers. Downstairs, my sister was standing in a resort she thought I could never afford, laughing about how I didn't belong there. I looked at Caleb. "Not yet," I said, then my phone buzzed. Grace's message was short. "The acquisition is finalized. All documents are ready for tonight." I closed my hand around the phone and watched Vanessa accept a glass of champagne from an employee she had already humiliated. And I knew dinner would not end with candles and cake. I went back to my private villa before sunset. The walkway was warm under my heels, each step hollow against the wood below me. Small silver fish moved through the clear water like scraps of light. Everything around me was beautiful enough to make strangers whisper. But my hands were steady for a different reason. I was done whispering inside my own life. Grace was waiting in the living room with a thin leather folder on the coffee table. She did not ask if I was okay. That was one of the reasons I trusted her. She knew there were moments when comfort only slowed down clarity. "The dinner pavilion is ready," she said. "Private family seating. No outside guests close enough to hear." "Good, and the documents." She opened the folder. No dramatic stack of papers, no theatrical trap, just clean, organized truth, payments, contracts, internal reports, guest bills, staff statements, rounded figures that told a simple story. Tonight's birthday dinner cost more than most families made in a year, and every dollar had come through my office. Then came the acquisition summary, the hotel group where my father, my mother, and Vanessa had built their pride had been under review for months, not because of them, not because I wanted revenge. It was a tired business with decent bones and weak leadership. I had planned to buy it long before Vanessa decided I was too poor to attend dinner. But timing has a strange sense of humor. Grace tapped the final page. "Legal confirmed. You can announce the ownership transition if you choose, but you don't have to." I looked at the paper. Then at the ocean beyond the glass. That was the line I needed to hold. I could have destroyed Vanessa at that table. I could have made a speech sharp enough to make her cry into her linen napkin. I could have canceled their villa, sent their luggage back to the dock, and let them feel the kind of rejection they had wrapped around my name for years. But humiliation had raised us. I refused to let it raise me too. "No public scene," I said. "No staff dragged into it. No cruelty for entertainment." Grace nodded. "What do you want?" Then I picked up my phone and opened Vanessa's text again. This party is at an exclusive resort. You can't afford it. The words looked smaller now. I want the truth in the room, I said. I want my father to hear what his silence protected. I want my mother to understand that politeness is not kindness. And I want Vanessa to learn that status is not a shield. Grace's expression softened. And after that? After that. The company policy applies to everyone. That was the part Vanessa would hate most. Not being ruined, being treated fairly. I stood and walked into the bedroom. My white dress hung against the closet door, simple and sharp, the color of seafoam under moonlight. Beside it sat the old family photo I had brought from my office. For years, I had stared at that picture and wished someone had pulled me closer to the center. Tonight, I finally understood. I did not need their table. They had been sitting at mine the whole time. By the time I reached the dinner pavilion, the sky had turned deep blue, and the water beneath the glass floor glowed with soft underwater lights. My father's birthday table looked like something from a magazine: white orchids, crystal glasses, a small cake with gold leaf on top. The kind of cake Vanessa would photograph before tasting, just to prove she had been near it. I paused outside the entrance and listened. "This is unreal," Dad said quietly. For once. His voice did not sound critical. It sounded young. My mother laughed in that careful way she did when she wanted to seem comfortable around wealth. Vanessa's voice cut through both of them. I heard the owner might stop by. Probably some old heiress with too much money, or one of those trust fund women who thinks hiring good staff makes her a genius. I almost smiled. Caleb stood beside the table in his dark suit, hands folded. "Mr. Harrison," he said, "on behalf of our ownership, happy birthday. Tonight's dinner was personally arranged for your family." Dad straightened. "That's very generous. It is also unusually private," Caleb continued, "at the owner's request." Vanessa leaned forward. "So she is coming?" "Yes," Caleb said. "She is already here." That was my cue. I stepped into the light. The conversation stopped so completely I could hear the soft clink of ice in my mother's glass. Vanessa blinked first, then frowned. "What are you doing here?" I did not answer her. I walked around the table slowly, past my mother's frozen smile, past my father's hand resting beside his untouched wine, past the empty chair Vanessa had left at the far end, as if even my absence needed an assigned place. Caleb pulled out the chair at the head of the table. "Ms. Harrison," he said. My father looked at Caleb, then at me. Something in his face shifted: confusion, recognition, fear. Maybe. Not fear of me, fear of what he had missed. I sat down. Vanessa gave a short laugh. "Okay, what is this?" "Did you convince someone to let you play hostess for your little travel blog?" my mother whispered. "Vanessa." But she said it too late. I placed my phone on the table and turned the screen toward my sister. Her own message stared back at her. "This party is at an exclusive resort. You can't afford it." Nobody moved. I looked at Vanessa and said, "You were right about one thing. This resort is exclusive." Her lips parted, but nothing came out. "I own it." The words landed quietly. That made them heavier. Dad's eyes dropped to the table, then rose again. "Helen, I own this resort," I said, "and others like it. The travel work you mocked was market research, brand building, and years of listening to guests more carefully than this family ever listened to me." My mother's face went pale. Vanessa shook her head. "No, that's not possible." Caleb opened the slim folder in front of my father. Not a performance, not a threat, just proof. Ownership summary, event authorization, the dinner approval under my office, rounded cost figures, enough to make the truth impossible to laugh away. Dad touched the first page like it might burn him. "I thought you were lost," he said. My throat tightened, but my voice stayed even. "No, you just stopped looking." That hurt him. I saw it. For a second. I wanted to apologize for the pain in his eyes. Then I remembered every room where I had waited for him to notice mine. Vanessa pushed back from the table. So what, you brought us here to embarrass us? No, I said. You brought yourselves here that way. Her cheeks flushed. And now you're going to fire me? She snapped. Is that the grand revenge? I turned to Caleb. He placed another page beside her setting. The hotel group you work for has been acquired, I said. Legally, after months of review. That announcement goes out next week. My mother covered her mouth. Vanessa stared at the paper. You can't do this. I already did. But I'm not firing you at my father's birthday dinner. Her face changed. That frightened her more. Then what do you want standards? I said. The same ones you demanded from everyone beneath you. I slid the staff report toward her. You will enter a 6-month management retraining program. You will apologize to the employees you insulted today. You will be evaluated by people who do not share your last name. Or you may resign with a lawful transition package. The pavilion went silent except for the water moving under us. Dad looked smaller than I had ever seen him. Mom's eyes filled. But I could not tell if she was sad for me or ashamed for herself. Vanessa looked from the report to my face, searching for the weak spot she used to press. She did not find it. Why didn't you tell us? She whispered. I looked around the table I had been told I could not afford. At the family who had mistaken my quiet for failure. Because, I said, I wanted to see who you were when you thought I had nothing. For once. Vanessa had no answer. She just looked down at her perfect white napkin, twisting it between her fingers until it lost its shape. The announcement went out the following Monday. No scandal, no dramatic headline, just a clean corporate memo about new ownership, updated standards, and leadership reviews across the hotel group. Vanessa did not lose everything overnight. That would have been too easy. She lost the thing she had protected most carefully, the illusion that her last name made her untouchable. 2 weeks later. Caleb sent me a short update. Vanessa had attended her first management retraining session. No designer sunglasses, no gold bracelets clinking against the table. Just a plain navy blazer and a notebook in front of her. At the end of the session, she stood before 3 front desk employees and apologized. Not beautifully, not with tears, just stiffly. Like every word had corners. But she said it. I was wrong. That was enough for the first day. My father called me that evening. I almost let it go to voicemail. The old version of me would have answered too quickly, grateful for any crumb of warmth from him. This time, I let it ring twice. Helen, he said when I picked up. I don't know how to talk to you without sounding like I'm making excuses. Then don't make excuses, I said. The silence after that was long. Finally, he breathed out. I should have asked who you became. It was not an apology big enough for 5 years. But it was the first sentence that did not try to make me smaller. Mom sent me a photo later that night. I was 17 in it, standing at the edge of a family barbecue, hair blowing across my face, holding a paper plate and smiling like I was waiting to be invited closer. Under the picture, she wrote, I should have seen you better. I sat with that message for a long time. Then I placed the old family photo back on my desk, but not in the center, beside it. I set a new one. Me on the resort dock at sunrise, barefoot, wind in my hair, no one's hand on my shoulder, no one pulling me into frame, and somehow, I looked more loved than I ever had at their table. Peace did not arrive like fireworks. It came quietly, with coffee on the balcony, waves under the villa, and a phone that could light up without making my stomach drop. Here's what I learned. The people who love you should never need you to look small so they can feel tall. Family is not a velvet rope. It is not a guest list. It is not a chair someone else gets to pull away when they decide you have stopped making them proud. That night, I did not win because I owned the resort. I won because I stopped begging for a place in a room I had already outgrown. If someone in your life keeps calling you lost just because they are no longer allowed to define you, listen closely. You may not be lost. You may simply be leaving. If you've ever been made to feel small by the people who should have protected you, share your story in the comments and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Sometimes the most powerful seat at the table is the one you finally stop begging for.